The Georgia sun blazed mercilessly over Fort Benning as Staff Sergeant Maya Rodriguez adjusted her combat boots for the third time that morning. At 5'4" and barely 130 pounds, she looked like a child playing dress-up among the towering figures of Alpha Company. The boots, pristine, unscuffed, clearly new, marked her as fresh meat in a unit that had seen 3 deployments together. "Oh, look what the cat dragged in," sneered Corporal Jake Mitchell, a mountain of a man from Alabama whose biceps strained against his ACUs. "Little girl's got brand new boots. Bet she polished them with her mommy's nail polish." The barracks erupted in laughter. 12 hardened soldiers, battle-tested and skeptical, sized up their new sniper. Maya's file was impressive on paper. Top of her class at sniper school, expert marksman ratings, psychological evaluations that praised her exceptional calm under pressure. But paper meant nothing here. This was Alpha Company, the tip of the spear, and they'd lost their last sniper to an IED in Kandahar 6 months ago. "Rodriguez!" barked Sergeant First Class Tommy Walsh, a grizzled veteran with 20 years under his belt. "You think you can fill Martinez's boots? That man could put a round through a quarter at 800 meters in a sandstorm." Maya met his stare without flinching. "I don't think so, Sergeant. I know so." Another wave of laughter, but this time it carried an edge. Confidence was expected, but arrogance got people killed. Maya felt the weight of their judgment, the invisible test that every new soldier faced. In her 3 years in the army, she'd encountered this skepticism everywhere: basic training, AIT, sniper school. Being a Latina woman in a male-dominated field meant proving herself twice as hard for half the recognition. "Big words for someone who's never seen combat," Mitchell continued, his Texas drawl dripping with condescension. "Tell me, sweetheart, you ever had someone shooting back at you while you're trying to line up that perfect shot?" "No," Maya replied simply. But I've been preparing for it my whole life." She thought of her father, a Marine veteran who'd taught her to shoot on their ranch outside El Paso. Hours spent in the desert heat, learning to control her breathing, to find that perfect moment between heartbeats when the rifle became an extension of her body. Her father had seen something in her that others missed, a preternatural stillness, an ability to shut out the world and focus on a single point of light through a scope. The conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chen, the battalion commander whose reputation preceded her. A West Point graduate with 2 Bronze Stars, Chen commanded respect through competence rather than intimidation. She surveyed the assembled soldiers with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Gentlemen, meet your new designated marksman. Rodriguez comes to us with the highest scores in her class and recommendations from instructors who don't give praise lightly." Her gaze swept the room, landing on each skeptical face. "I suggest you give her the same respect you'd want if you were walking into a new unit." "Ma'am," Walsh interjected, "with all due respect, we've been through hell together. Trust isn't something you can order into existence." Chen nodded slowly. "You're right, Sergeant. Trust is earned, which is why Rodriguez will have the opportunity to prove herself during next week's joint training exercise with the Rangers. Live ammunition, realistic scenarios, high-value targets that need to be eliminated with surgical precision." Maya felt her pulse quicken. Joint exercises were notoriously brutal, designed to push soldiers to their absolute limits. The Rangers were legendary for their intensity, and failing in front of them would mark her as a liability for the rest of her career. "The scenario is simple," Chen continued. "Insurgent stronghold in an urban environment. Hostages, civilians, multiple targets that require simultaneous elimination. 1 shot, 1 kill, 0 margin for error. The kind of situation where hesitation means your brothers die." Mitchell crossed his arms. "And if Little Boots here freezes up? If she can't pull the trigger when lives are on the line?" Chen's expression hardened. "Then she'll be transferred to a support role where her skills can be better utilized. But I have a feeling that won't be necessary." As the briefing concluded and soldiers dispersed to their duties, Maya remained behind, studying the tactical maps and target profiles. The exercise would take place in a mock Middle Eastern village constructed on the far side of the base, complete with narrow alleys, multi-story buildings, and hidden firing positions. Intelligence suggested 3 high-value targets needed elimination, each shot requiring different skills: long-range precision, quick target acquisition, and shooting through barriers. That evening, as the Georgia humidity settled like a blanket over the base, Maya found herself alone at the rifle range. The familiar weight of her M24 sniper weapon system felt reassuring in her hands. Each shot echoed across the empty range as she worked through various scenarios, adjusting for wind, elevation, and the subtle variations that separated good shooters from exceptional ones. She wasn't just fighting for acceptance anymore. She was fighting for the right to protect the men who would depend on her. In combat, their prejudices wouldn't matter. Only results would count. As she packed her rifle, Maya caught sight of her reflection in the scope's lens. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "Mia, they'll always underestimate you. Use that. Let them think you're just a girl with shiny boots until the moment you show them what you're really made of." The combat boots that had drawn so much ridicule suddenly felt different on her feet, not like symbols of inexperience, but like tools of war, ready to carry her wherever the mission demanded. Tomorrow would bring another day of skeptical glances and whispered doubts, but in 7 days, everything would change. The Georgia morning mist clung to Fort Benning like smoke from a distant fire as Alpha Company assembled for pre-exercise briefings. Maya arrived early, her rifle case slung across her shoulder, combat boots now showing the first signs of proper wear. The overnight field exercises had been brutal. 12-hour shifts, sleep deprivation, and constant evaluation from officers who seemed determined to find her breaking point. Corporal Mitchell intercepted her at the equipment check, his smile razor-sharp. "Heard you missed 3 shots yesterday during rapid target acquisition drill. That's 3 dead friendlies in a real-world scenario, boots." Maya kept her expression neutral, though the criticism stung. Yesterday's drill had been designed for failure, moving targets, simulated explosions, and a time limit that pushed even experienced marksmen to their limits. Her hit rate of 73% was actually above average, but in Mitchell's world, anything less than perfection from her was ammunition for mockery. "Rodriguez!" Sergeant Walsh's voice cut through the morning chatter. "You're up for vehicle interdiction simulation. 300 meters, moving target, 30-second window." The assembled soldiers formed a semicircle around the elevated shooting position, their skepticism palpable. Maya settled into her firing position, adjusting her scope for the morning light that filtered through the Georgian pines. Through her viewfinder, a modified Humvee began its predetermined route, carrying cardboard hostiles that would appear at random intervals. Her breathing slowed, heart rate dropping to the controlled rhythm her father had taught her. The world narrowed to the crosshairs dancing across the moving target. She could feel the weight of judgmental stares, hear whispered bets about whether she'd choke under pressure. The first target appeared, driver's side window, approximately 6-inch target zone. Maya tracked smoothly, finding the natural pause between breaths, between heartbeats. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. Direct hit, center mass. A murmur rippled through the crowd, but Maya was already tracking the second target. Passenger compartment, smaller window, vehicle now moving at 30 miles per hour. Another controlled breath, another perfect shot. But it was the third target that would prove decisive. The Humvee stopped abruptly, engine smoking from simulated damage. A terrorist figure popped up through the sunroof, holding a cardboard RPG launcher aimed directly at a group of civilian targets. Maya had perhaps 2 seconds before the scenario rules declared mission failure. At this angle, with the target partially obscured by the vehicle's frame, the shot required threading a bullet through a gap no larger than a coffee cup. Time slowed. Maya's world contracted to the geometry of the shot. Wind direction, bullet drop, the precise moment when the target would align with her crosshairs. She exhaled halfway, held and squeezed. The rifle's report echoed across the range. Through her scope, Maya watched the terrorist figure fold backward, the cardboard RPG spinning harmlessly to the ground. Silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then Sergeant Walsh's gravelly voice, "Jesus Christ." That was a hell of a shot. Even Mitchell looked grudgingly impressed, though he quickly covered it with a scowl. "Lucky," he muttered. "Let's see her do it when the bullets are flying both ways." But Maya caught something different in the soldiers. Expressions now, not quite respect, but the acknowledgement that she might be more than just a diversity checkbox. It was a start. The afternoon brought urban warfare simulations in the mock village, and Maya found herself assigned to Overwatch positions while Alpha Company practiced room clearing and hostage rescue. From her perch atop a 3-story concrete structure, she provided sniper support as her new squad mates moved through narrow alleyways below. "Rodriguez, eyes on Building 7, crackled the radio. "Possible sniper in the 3rd-floor window." Maya swiveled her scope, scanning the indicated structure. There, a glint of metal barely visible behind dusty glass. In a real scenario, that hostile sniper would have a clean shot at Walsh's team as they approached the target building. "A contact confirmed," she whispered into her mic. "Requesting permission to engage. Negative. Hold position until..." The simulated enemy sniper opened fire, blank rounds chattering from the window. On the street below, red smoke grenades marked casualties as Walsh's team scrambled for cover. "God damn it, Rodriguez!" Walsh's voice tight with simulated stress. "Take the shot!" But Maya had already squeezed the trigger. Through her scope, she watched the enemy sniper jerk backward, a red paintball splatter marking the kill shot. The exercise continued, but something fundamental had shifted in the unit's dynamic. That evening, as Alpha Company gathered for the debriefing, Lieutenant Colonel Chen reviewed the day's performance with characteristic precision. Maya sat in the back, conscious of the new attention her shots had generated. "Overall performance was acceptable," Chen began, "but I want to address today's sniper support. Rodriguez, your vehicle interdiction was textbook perfect. The urban overwatch..." She paused, consulting her notes. "Instructor comments indicate you anticipated the threat before it fully materialized and neutralized it within optimal parameters." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks as approving nods rippled through the room. Even Mitchell seemed to be reassessing his initial judgment. "However," Chen continued, and Maya's stomach dropped, "the real test comes in 3 days during the joint exercise with the Rangers. What you've accomplished here is impressive for training scenarios. Combat is different. Combat doesn't care about your range scores or your confidence. Combat reveals who you really are when everything goes to hell." After dismissal, Maya walked alone across the darkened base, her mind churning with anticipation and anxiety. The joint exercise would be unlike anything she'd experienced. Live ammunition in some scenarios, psychological pressure designed to break soldiers, and the unforgiving scrutiny of Rangers whose reputation for excellence was legendary. She paused at the memorial wall outside the company headquarters, reading the names of soldiers who'd paid the ultimate price. Martinez's name was there, along with a dozen others from Alpha Company's deployments. These weren't just names, they were reminders of what failure meant in the real world. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "How's it going, mija? Making those boys respect the Rodriguez name?" Maya smiled in the darkness. "Getting there, Papa, getting there." Tomorrow would bring more training, more skepticism, more opportunities to prove herself. But tonight, for the first time since arriving at Fort Benning, Maya Rodriguez felt like she might actually belong. The pre-dawn darkness at Fort Benning's Combat Training Center felt electric with tension. Maya Rodriguez checked her equipment for the 3rd time. M24 rifle, laser rangefinder, spotting scope, and enough ammunition for a small war. Around her, Alpha Company prepared for the joint exercise that would either validate her place in the unit or end her combat dreams forever. The Rangers had arrived the previous evening, and their presence transformed the atmosphere. These weren't regular army. These were the elite, soldiers whose standards made normal infantry look like weekend warriors. Their leader, Captain Marcus Stone, had the kind of reputation that preceded him like thunder before lightning. 3 bronze stars, a silver star, and a purple heart from 8 combat deployments. He evaluated new soldiers the way a jeweler examined diamonds, looking for flaws that would shatter under pressure. "Listen up," Sergeant First Class Walsh commanded, his voice cutting through the morning chill. "Today's scenario is based on actual intelligence from our Syrian operations. Terrorist cell holding American hostages in a compound. 3 high-value targets need simultaneous elimination to prevent execution of civilians. Rodriguez, your primary sniper. Mitchell and Harrison are your security detail." Maya felt the weight of every eye in the unit. This wasn't just an exercise anymore. It was her final exam, administered by instructors who'd seen real combat and wouldn't accept anything less than perfection. Captain Stone stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. "The targets are spread across a 300-meter zone. Target Alpha is a guard tower, 250 meters elevated position with limited exposure time. Target Bravo is a rooftop sniper, 400 meters, multiple concealment options. Target Charlie..." He paused, his steel-grey eyes finding Maya's. "Target Charlie is the most challenging. Basement window, hostage situation. You'll have approximately 18 inches of clearance with a civilian directly behind the hostile. Miss by even a fraction, and you kill an innocent." The mock village sprawled before them, a maze of concrete buildings designed to replicate Middle Eastern architecture. Intel photos showed the target locations, but Maya knew the real challenge would be the psychological pressure. The Rangers were notorious for introducing unexpected variables: simulated incoming fire, communication failures, equipment malfunctions, anything that might break a soldier's concentration at the critical moment. "Rodriguez," Stone continued, "you have 45 minutes to establish firing positions and neutralize all 3 targets on my command. Your team's survival depends on surgical precision, no second chances, no do-overs. This is as real as we can make it without actual enemy bullets." Maya settled into her primary position atop a 4-story structure that provided sightlines to all 3 targets. Through her scope, she began the methodical process of range estimation, wind calculation, and target assessment that separated professional snipers from amateur marksmen. Target Alpha appeared first, a terrorist guard visible for only seconds as he moved past an open tower window. Maya tracked his pattern, timing his appearances, calculating the lead time necessary for a moving shot. 250 meters, slight crosswind from the east. Target exposure window of approximately 3 seconds. Target Bravo proved more challenging. The enemy sniper, on the distant rooftop, moved unpredictably, using barrels and equipment for concealment. 400 meters in the morning heat would mean significant bullet drop and potential mirage effects. Maya adjusted her scope, noting the slight thermal distortion that could throw off her calculations by critical inches. But Target Charlie made her blood run cold. Through her high-powered scope, she could see the basement window clearly and the civilian hostage kneeling just 2 feet behind where the terrorist would appear. In a real-world scenario, this shot would require the kind of precision that separated legends from statistics. "All positions. Report ready status," crackled the radio. Maya's mouth felt dry as desert sand. "Sniper 1, ready." Around the compound, Alpha Company had taken their assault positions. Maya could see Walsh's team stacked outside the main entrance, Mitchell's fire team positioned to provide suppression, and the Rangers observing from concealed positions like deadly ghosts. "Execute! Execute! Execute!" Stone's command rang across the training area. Maya's world contracted to the scope's narrow field of view. Target Alpha first, the guard tower. She tracked smoothly as the figure appeared, led the target by the precise margin her calculations demanded, and squeezed the trigger in the natural pause between heartbeats. Through her scope, red paint splattered across the target's chest. Clean kill. Without hesitation, she pivoted to target Bravo. The rooftop sniper had emerged from concealment, rifle raised toward Walsh's assault team. 400 meters. Maya adjusted for the increased range, her breathing controlled and mechanical. The crosshairs settled on center mass just as the target reached full exposure. Second shot, second kill. But as she swiveled toward the basement window for the critical third shot, Maya's worst nightmare materialized. Through her scope, she saw not the expected stationary target, but a dynamic hostage situation. The terrorist was moving, using the civilian as a human shield, creating a constantly shifting geometry that made the shot nearly impossible. "Rodriguez!" Walsh's voice urgent over the radio. "Charlie team is pinned down. We need that shot now." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands remained steady. This was the moment her father had prepared her for. Not just the technical challenge, but the crushing weight of responsibility. In a real scenario, hesitation would mean dead Americans. But rushing the shot might mean a dead innocent. She tracked the moving figures, waiting for the split second when the geometry would align. The terrorist moved left, exposing his shoulder. Not enough. He shifted right, his head visible for half a second, still too risky with the civilian so close. Then it happened. The terrorist made a crucial error, stepping forward to get a better firing angle at the assault team. For perhaps 1 second, maybe less, his upper torso was completely clear of the hostage. Maya's rifle spoke with authority. Through her scope, she watched the third target fold backward, red paint marking another perfect shot. The hostage remained unharmed. "All targets eliminated." Stone's voice carried a note of surprise. "Cease exercise. Cease exercise." As Maya secured her rifle, she became aware of the profound silence that had settled over the training area. Rangers and regular army soldiers alike stared at her position with something approaching awe. 3 shots, 3 kills, the most challenging under conditions designed to break lesser marksmen. Captain Stone's voice crackled over the radio. "Rodriguez, report to my position immediately." Maya made her way through the mock village, her legs feeling unsteady after the adrenaline surge. She found Stone examining the target positions, measuring shot placement with the precision of a scientist. "Martinez was our sniper," Stone said without preamble, referring to Alpha Company's fallen marksman. "Good soldier, solid fundamentals. But he never could have made that third shot." He looked at Maya directly, his expression unreadable. "You just performed at a level I've only seen from operators with multiple combat deployments." Around them, Alpha Company gathered, their earlier skepticism replaced by something Maya had never seen before, genuine respect from hardened warriors who'd witnessed something exceptional. "But," Stone continued, and Maya's stomach dropped, "training is training. Combat will test you in ways no simulation can replicate. The real question is whether you can perform like this when people are actually trying to kill you." 6 weeks later, the transport helicopter carrying Alpha Company thundered through the pre-dawn darkness over eastern Syria. What had started as a routine joint operation with Kurdish forces had escalated into a high-priority rescue mission when intelligence confirmed that 3 American aid workers were being held in a compound outside Raqqa. Maya Rodriguez pressed her eye to the helicopter's small window, watching the hostile landscape scroll beneath them. The combat boots that had once drawn ridicule were now worn and dust-caked, bearing the scars of intensive training and deployment preparation. In the cramped troop compartment, her squad mates checked weapons and reviewed mission parameters with the grim efficiency of professionals preparing for war. 2 minutes out! The crew chief shouted over the rotor noise. Maya's hands moved automatically through her equipment check. M24 rifle, suppressor, night vision scope, laser rangefinder. Everything exactly as it had been during the joint exercise, but with one terrifying difference. This time, the enemy would shoot back. Sergeant Walsh leaned across the narrow space, his voice barely audible above the helicopter's din. "Rodriguez, you good? This isn't Fort Benning anymore." Maya met his eyes, seeing concern rather than skepticism. Over the past month, she'd become more than Alpha Company's designated marksman. She'd become family. The transformation hadn't happened overnight, but through countless training missions, late-night equipment maintenance sessions, and shared hardships that forged units into brotherhoods. "I'm ready, Sergeant." Walsh nodded, but Maya caught the worry in his expression. Intelligence indicated at least 12 hostile fighters in the compound, armed with automatic weapons and possibly anti-aircraft missiles. The 3 American hostages were being held in a basement room, with execution scheduled for dawn, less than 90 minutes away. The helicopter flared for landing, kicking up clouds of sand that turned the world into a swirling brown nightmare. Alpha Company deployed rapidly, spreading into defensive positions, while Maya established overwatch on a small hill 300 meters from the target compound. Through her night vision scope, the terrorist stronghold appeared as a collection of interconnected concrete buildings surrounded by walls and guard towers. Intel had identified 3 critical shots needed for mission success: 2 perimeter guards whose elimination would create a breach corridor, and most crucially, the terrorist leader who held the execution weapon directly over one of the American hostages. "Sniper 1, this is actual." Captain Stone's voice crackled through her radio. The Ranger officer had insisted on personally commanding the operation, and his presence brought both confidence and additional pressure. "Report target acquisition." Maya swept her scope across the compound methodically. "Target Alpha acquired. Guard tower northeast corner. 1 hostile with AK-47. Range 260 meters. She continued her surveillance, heart rate controlled, despite the knowledge that real bullets waited in the darkness. "Target Bravo acquired. Rooftop position, single hostile, RPG visible. Range 320 meters. But target Charlie, the terrorist leader, remained elusive. Intelligence suggested he was in the basement with the hostages, but Maya couldn't establish a clear sight picture through the small, barred windows. "The negative on target Charlie," she reported. "No visual confirmation." "Copy that. Continue surveillance. Assault team moving to breach positions." Maya watched Alpha Company's shadowy figures advance through the darkness, using natural cover and tactical movement that would make their instructors proud. Mitchell led the primary breach team, the same soldier who'd mocked her combat boots, now trusting his life to her marksmanship skills. Then everything went sideways. A flare burst above the compound, turning night into harsh white daylight. The terrorists had detected the approaching assault team and were mobilizing for defense. Through her scope, Maya saw hostile fighters pouring from buildings, taking firing positions, preparing to turn Alpha Company's rescue mission into a bloodbath. "Contact! Contact!" Walsh's voice, tight with combat stress. "We're taking heavy fire from multiple positions." "Rodriguez!" Stone's command cut through the chaos. "Targets Alpha and Bravo are engaging our people. Take them down." Maya's training kicked in like muscle memory. Target Alpha first, the guard tower. Through her scope, she could see the hostile firing controlled bursts at Mitchell's team, muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness. 260 meters, slight wind from the east, moving target. Her breathing slowed to the familiar rhythm. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, and she watched the guard tower fighter stumble backward, weapon falling silent. Immediately, she pivoted to target Bravo. The rooftop terrorist was raising his RPG, aimed directly at the building where Walsh's team had taken cover. The explosion would kill at least 4 Americans, maybe more. 320 meters. Significant bullet drop. Maya adjusted her point of aim, tracking the figure as he prepared to fire. She found the natural pause between heartbeats and squeezed. The terrorist spun and fell, the unfired RPG clattering across the rooftop. "Outstanding shots!" Stone's voice carried fierce approval. "But we still need target Charlie. The hostages—" His transmission was cut short by a new horror. Through her scope, Maya saw a figure emerge from the basement entrance, a bearded man in tactical gear, dragging one of the American hostages. The terrorist pressed a pistol to the aid worker's head, using him as a human shield while shouting demands in Arabic. "Jesus Christ," Walsh's voice over the radio. "He's going to execute them right here in the courtyard." Maya's scope found the scene instantly. The terrorist leader stood 20 meters from the basement entrance, the American hostage kneeling beside him, hands zip-tied behind his back. Even at 300 meters, Maya could see the fear in the hostage's eyes, the trembling that comes with proximity to death. But the shot was impossible. The terrorist kept the hostage between himself and Alpha Company's position, using the human shield with practiced expertise. Any angle that exposed the hostile would risk hitting the innocent American. "Rodriguez," Stone's voice, deadly calm, "I need options." Maya studied the geometry through her scope, calculating angles and probabilities with desperate precision. The terrorist was intelligent, maintaining position that made him essentially untouchable while keeping lethal pressure on his captive. Then she noticed something, a pattern in the terrorist's movements. Every 30 seconds or so, he would lean slightly left to shout commands at his fighters, creating a brief window where his shoulder became exposed. Maybe 6 inches of target area, visible for perhaps 1 second. It was the kind of shot that existed at the very edge of human possibility. 300 meters, nighttime conditions, a target the size of a softball that appeared for 1 second every half minute. Miss by even 2 inches, and the bullet would kill the hostage instead of his captor. "I have a possible shot," Maya reported, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was contemplating. "High risk of collateral damage. Recommend waiting for better geometry." "Negative." Stone's reply was immediate and final. "He's preparing to execute all 3 hostages. You're our only option. Take the shot when ready." Maya settled deeper into her firing position, her entire world contracting to the scope's narrow field of view. Through her earpiece, she could hear Alpha Company's suppressed breathing, waiting for the shot that would either save 3 American lives or haunt her forever. The terrorist leader moved into his pattern, leaning left to bark orders. Maya tracked smoothly, crosshairs dancing across the small target area. Not yet. The angle wasn't quite right. Another cycle. The terrorist leaned left, exposing his shoulder for 1 precious second. Maya's crosshairs found the target, but something felt off. The wind had shifted slightly, enough to throw her calculations. 3rd cycle. Maya's breathing slowed to almost nothing, her heartbeat the only sound in the universe. The terrorist began his movement, leaning left, shoulder appearing in her scope's crosshairs. This was it. The moment that would define not just her career, but her entire understanding of herself as a soldier. Maya found that perfect stillness between heartbeats, between breaths, between doubt and certainty. She squeezed the trigger. Through her scope, Maya watched the terrorist leader jerk backward, struck center mass. The pistol flew from his hand as he collapsed, the American hostage diving for cover behind a concrete barrier. For a moment, silence stretched across the battlefield. Then Stone's voice, filled with something approaching reverence. "Holy shit, Rodriguez. That was impossible." The compound's remaining terrorists, demoralized by their leader's death and the precision of Alpha Company's assault, began surrendering. Within 20 minutes, all 3 American hostages were secured and evacuation helicopters inbound. As Maya packed her rifle, she became aware of Alpha Company gathering around her position. These hardened warriors, men who'd seen combat across multiple deployments, looked at her with unmistakable awe. "That shot," Mitchell said, shaking his head slowly. "That shot just made you a legend." Maya looked down at her combat boots, now bearing the dust of Syrian soil and the weight of lives saved. The same boots that had drawn mockery now carried her across ground where heroes were measured not by words, but by actions under impossible pressure. Captain Stone approached, extending his hand. "Rodriguez, I've seen a lot of snipers in my career, but what you just did, that was the shot of a lifetime." As the evacuation helicopters approached through the dawn sky, Maya Rodriguez understood that she'd found something more valuable than acceptance from her peers. She'd found herself a warrior capable of impossible things when the stakes demanded nothing less than perfection. The boots had never been the issue. It was everything they'd carried her toward that mattered.